Hey everybody, welcome to episode 54 of the Half Price Concessions podcast. I'm your co-host Tyler Williams, and I am so glad to have you listening in, whether this is your first episode or you've listened to a few of our episodes. We really appreciate you being here. Today's featured guest is Mr. Ryan Robertson, who, if you live in the state of North Carolina, you've probably seen him race at Bowman Gray Stadium, a Speedway, Caraway Speedway, Hickory Speedway on the 602 Tour. Ryan has been able to race a lot of different things. You may have even seen him at Martinsville Speedway in a late model or at Richmond Raceway. Ryan Robertson, the third generation driver out of Walberg, North Carolina, has been able to drive a lot of different things and have a pretty cool little career in racing. As we sat down, we look back on some of Ryan's greatest accomplishments, his greatest memories of racing, and what his outlook is going forward. Stay tuned. On the other side of these messages, we welcome Ryan Robertson to the Half Price Concessions podcast.
When you're eating breakfast, you don't think twice about hitting an electric line in your cereal. If you're looking through your dresser, does damaging a fiber optic line cross your mind? Of course not, because those utilities are buried underground. So don't think twice about calling 811 before digging. 811 is a free service, takes as little as 5 minutes, protects you and your neighborhood, and it's the law. So call or click 811 today. This safety message brought to you by North Carolina 811.
This episode of the Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you with support from Performance Center Racing Warehouse. In addition to being the home of the PRW chassis, Performance Center offers in-house setups and consulting, plus suspension and chassis pull-down analysis, along with their fabrication shop that can re-clip your race car with the fastest turnaround in the industry. Give Roger Johnson and the Performance Center team the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 or visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Here on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and my man Ryan Robertson. Good to see you once again, brother. It's been a while since I've seen you. I think the last time I seen you, you were running I think it was a 602 modified at Hickory, and if I'm not mistaken, it was like a freight train effect. You guys were just knocking the pudding out of each other, trying to get to the bottom. And I always remember when I went down to see you, you had like the biggest smile on your face, and I was sitting there, I was like, man, his neck's got to be hurting from running this thing.
They beat the crap out of me, man, but I had such a blast running the modified. So, yeah, my uncle let me drive, man, and man, I had a blast. Those guys raced really hard. It was a lot of fun, man. I enjoyed running there.
I was about to say, I didn't, when I was sitting there thinking about coming to talk to you, and you always try to put a label on someone, so I was sitting there thinking, like, do I do Ryan Robertson from Bowman Gray? Do I do Ryan Robertson of A Speedway? Do I do Ryan Robertson of, I don't know what. And as far as racing, even though your window is not the biggest compared to some people that have just ran for 60, 70 years, what window you've had has been pretty darn diverse, man. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, you were not a one-track Joe by no means. I mean, you got to do a lot of different stuff in your driving career.
Yeah, man, I had a lot of fun, and I was very fortunate to get linked up with some really good people. When I started racing, I started Bowman Gray. Never really had any ambition or really any thoughts about going as far as we actually did. So man, the things that I've been able to do and the places that I've been able to go was a blessing, man. Yeah.
I'm about to say, you're a third generation driver in your right with your dad and your grandpa racing, and it's funny because it seems like with the people I've known that have done anything in 2 and 3 generations, usually by the time it gets to that third, it's like one of the toughest things to kind of carve your own path and be your own man and not be just your dad times 2 or your grandpa times 2 or whatever. And I think you did a pretty good job of that, just from where I knew you, because you did branch out more, and you were kind of your own person, and I mean, it was really cool to see. And I didn't even get to see you race the whole time. I'd have killed. What was 16-year-old Ryan Robertson like trying to get around Bowman Gray Stadium? Tell me what that was like.
The 16-year-old Ryan could barely push the clutch in, sitting on pit road, getting ready to go on the racetrack because his legs were shaking so bad.
Oh man!
And he could not drive that well. You know, it took me a good 2 or 3 years to really understand the car and understand how to drive it. And Bowman Gray is unlike any other track that you get to race at, because, you know, I honestly feel like the bigger tracks are easier to drive, but at Bowman Gray you have to manhandle that race car, and you just have to drive it on the edge in order to be fast. And starting out at that being your first track and never racing before, that was really a challenge. But what a better place to start, because having that experience of racing at such a small track, having to use the bumper, you know, being comfortable with being in tight spots and around people, that really helped me out, you know, the more that my career progressed.
You were probably the youngest person out there too, weren't you? You probably didn't have anybody your age out there with you.
No.
These are all grown men, your dad's age.
Oh yeah, there were some grown men. But I had a lot of fun, man. It was a good time.
Yeah. Was that a cool thing to be able to sell to your buddies? Like, you know, well, what are you doing? You out here playing disc golf, something in the backyard. I'm driving a race car.
Man, you know, the coolest part was just having all my friends being able to, from high school, being able to come watch me race. And I'll never forget, there was one night I got into it. Somebody had wrecked my dad, and, you know, I'm 16 at the time, so I'm a hothead. And, you know, to make a long story short, I ended up coming, you know, I was in the pits already. Something happened that night, and, you know, my dad and somebody got into it. I come, you know, out of the pits, cross the track, you know, in the infield, in front of everybody, you know, all my friends, and it was pretty funny. We had a good time with that. But yeah, there's some pretty good stories at Bowman Gray.
I'm about to say. Now, how long were you just a Bowman Gray guy before you started to branch out?
From 16 to 18. And then once I got to 18, Friendship came along in Elkin. So we would do the Friday night races at Friendship, and then we would turn around and do Bowman Gray on a Saturday night.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Being able to race twice, you know, Friday night and Saturday night really helped me out a lot. It gave me a lot of seat time. And those were some really good times.
You know, I've only gotten to drive a race car, and I say that in quotes twice. It was a couple of U-car races, nowhere near on the level that you did. And I remember, from my vantage point, I was so nervous, and Brad Allen told me, he said, I want you to feel what it feels like to fall off in turn one with a crowd around you. And I remember how true that was, because it was just like, yeah, there is no feeling like this. Did you kind of have a moment like that where you got that instant gratification and like, yeah, this is fun? Yeah,
so every caution lap at Bowman Gray.
Really?
Yeah.
Caution?
Yeah, because, man, there's just so many people there, and they are so passionate about racing. And, you know, it's just, you never know who you're going to see in the stands. I grew up there. So, yeah, during the caution laps, you're looking out, you know, in the stands, and you're like, holy cow, there is a lot of people here.
Did you get some single finger salutes?
I got some single finger salutes and some, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, hey, as a result of it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just going to School of Hard Knocks there, because, like you said, it's a tight track. There's a lot of cars out there. You're going to run into somebody. Were you kind of okay with the confrontation and the disputes that were going to come up, or did you kind of have to grow into that? Because, you know, for a lot of people, them first couple times, it just racks their nerves and gives them an anxiety attack. Yeah. How did you handle that?
Well, I hated it, and, you know, I still hate it. but it's a part of it. I think, I give a lot of credit to my dad, because my dad, and just like with my little brother, he's our voice of reason on the radio. So my dad did everything he could do to try to protect me, and teach me how to gain the respect of my peers, and the people that he, raced with. So, he did as much as he could to keep me out of the way. But, of course you're going to run into situations to where people run all over you, and at some point you're going to have to stand up for yourself, and that's happened to me on several different occasions. But you don't really have a choice. You have to do what you got to do to make a point, to know that, you're not going to be pushed around. And that happens more at Bowman Gray, but it happens everywhere. But, at some point, you will have to do it. Just like my little brother, he's a much better driver than I am, and, he's probably going to run across that. But it's just a part of racing, man,
So you started to branch out, like you said, to friendship. Was getting to run somewhere other than just one track, did that kind of open your eyes to this is more fun to kind of bounce around at other tracks rather than just stay at one? Like, what was your mindset on that? Because some people will look at that, they go run somewhere that's not their home track, and if they have a bad day or they don't run as good, they're like, well, I just need to go back to what I know best, which is track A over here. How did you approach kind of moving around?
Yeah, so I've always grown up. I was a baby in the stands at Bowman Gray, so I was super familiar with Bowman Gray. I've been there all my life. It was 15 minutes down the road. I watched my dad, my grandpa, my uncle. They all raced there. But I knew that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to branch out and see what other tracks were like. And we started to go to Friendship. I'm like, wow, I really enjoy this. I've got more room to race. I can wind this thing out a little bit more, and so it just it increased the amount of fun that I had. And then we started, we got sponsorship, and from Friendship we would go to Caraway, and then we got to travel around. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. There might be something here. So we just we did what families do that race, and we got everybody together and we hit the road and we enjoyed it.
Now, before we turned the mics on, you were showing me a piece of asphalt you got from Concord, and we were talking about just how iconic that place will always be to anybody that's seen a race or raced there, from someone who got to race there. Tell me what made that place so much fun for you as a driver, because it seems like almost anyone I've ever talked to that raced there says the same thing. It was the biggest rush to get to run there. What was, take me in your perspective.
For me, Concord, hands down, out of all the racetracks that I've been to, and I've been to a lot, Concord, hands down, is my favorite racetrack. What separates it from all the other ones is the courage that you have to race there, and the courage that you have to win. When you're going through the dog leg, especially when you have somebody on the outside, whether you're on the inside or the outside, you've got to make a decision as a race car driver. Who's going to lift? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be me, or is it going to be him? And when you're battling for the lead and you're going to win, that's a decision that you have to make in order to win. But it's also a decision that you have to make every lap, because in order to be fast, you can't lift. And I'm speaking for all the cars that I've ran there, but just the sensation of coming across that dog leg, knowing that oh man, like I want to pull my leg off the throttle, but you can't. I remember I went back in 2010 with a 4-barrel with the UARA cars, and I was scared to death. And I didn't run well. And that bothered me, because I'm like, I can do this, but it was just, I come from Bowman Gray. I had never experienced anything like that. I was scared to death the first time I went there, and then we went back again. I'm like, okay, I can get the hang of this.
Yeah.
And then as a couple years went by, I didn't get to go back, And I went back and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm not gonna lift and
hold your breath and go.
Yeah, and I love the Charlotte area, and just for some reason, like that was the only racetrack that I ever went to that when I went there and like I knew that I was going there, like I couldn't sleep.
Yeah,
because I was so excited to go there.
So that's the good stuff, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to be juiced up going in.
Yeah,
You want to have that.
And it, you know, as I progressed and got better and better, you know, man, I just couldn't wait to go get there.
Yeah. Now, what was your take on Ace? Because Ace has always been Ace is where I first seen you run the Savage Energy car in the UAR Stars, and when I started announcing there in 2010, you started coming and won some big races there and ran late models there. And Ace has always had a special place to a lot of people just because people say it's a driver's track and it's just so different. So from someone who actually had talent, was out there on a racetrack running with these guys, what was Ace like for you?
I had some good times and some good runs at Ace. I really liked Ace Speedway. We always had good cars when we ran there, but Ace, you know, I feel like I was pretty good at Ace because of my friendship days. Because I think a lot of the characteristics at Ace is similar to what friendship was, you know, when it was still asphalt. You know, turn 1 was the same. You go in, it's a sharp turn. You got to be right up against the wall. Turn 3 and 4 is the pretty much the exact same layout. And so whenever we would go there, it was just it was familiar to me. But I really enjoyed running Ace.
What was the furthest you got to go to race? Like, what was the longest haul you ever took? I got a feeling it was Richmond, but I don't know. Maybe you went somewhere further.
Richmond was a pretty good haul. I would say it would be between Richmond and Coastal Plains.
Oh,
yeah.
I almost forgot about
Coastal Plains is probably. That would definitely be in my top 5.
That was a funky little place,
man.
Yeah,
it's a mini Charlotte.
Yeah.
And it's shaped just like Charlotte. I had a lot of fun there. You had the drag strip, so we did the UARA race when the UARA guys were there. Of course it was a weekend deal, so we had practice on Friday, and everybody at the end of the night, you got done at the oval track. Well, right across, you know, as you're leaving, you got the drag strip right there.
Yeah.
So a bunch of us would hang out at the drag strip and just watch them drag race, like Mustangs, S10s. And I think that's probably the first time I ever experienced drag racing before. So that was a lot of fun, man.
There you go. I can't believe you've never gone to Piedmont or any of these other ones.
So I've been to 2 drag races before. Coastal Plains was my first one.
Yeah.
And I went to the 4-wide nationals at Charlotte. That's the only time I've ever been to a drag race.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Richmond, though, definitely a cool deal because your racing reference page, I don't know if you've ever actually looked at your racing reference page. It has those 2 starts you got to make at Richmond with the Denny Hamlin Short Track Showdown when they ran it there a couple of years. And, I mean, you were out there with Denny Hamlin, obviously. I think Kyle Busch was in it. I think Joey Logano, Michael Waltrip, some of those guys. And then anyone that stalks your Facebook page will see that there's that great picture like you guys are like kind of on this little stage thing. What was it like to get to interact with those guys? Did you even really look up to those guys?
Yeah, that was a pretty cool. So I think we ended practice, and I was second quickest right under Denny. So that's how I was able to do the Q&A with those guys. Man, it was for me at that time. You know, it was a dream come true. You know, I was at Richmond. Never thought I'd ever get to go there. I just saw Danica Patrick pass by in the bathrooms. I never saw her. So I was like, wow, you know, she's pretty hot. She's awful short.
Yeah, I was about to say, tiny little girl.
Yeah, and man, just to be able to race, to say that I was able to race with people like Tony Stewart and all those guys, and to be around them was pretty cool.
Were they cool to you, or were they a little standoffish?
Yeah. So honestly, we all met up I can't remember where we were at the racetrack, but we all had to take a van together, and so they put us all in the van. And the coolest person out of everybody that was in there, believe it or not, was Kyle Busch.
Yeah, it's funny because his persona, when he doesn't win a race, is the total opposite.
Yeah.
But you had a good experience.
Yeah, I had a good, Kyle and I, we had a conversation. He was. I think by far he was the nicest.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
How many people can say they got to do that, man?
Yeah. That was definitely a good memory for me.
Yeah. So you got to do that. You got to run. What was it like with? Because at the time when you were with UARA Stars, there's so many people I know that look back on who all was on that tour and the people that came through it, and Jake Crum and Kyle Grissom, and and that's just a few of them. There was so much talent that came through there, and you were running with those guys quite a bit. What was it like just being around some of those guys? Because I mean, you go from like when you started out at Bowman Gray and everybody's a grown man, everybody's half of them probably old enough to be your dad, and then you run on this late model tour where these guys are younger.
Yeah, it was serious business. Man, it was awesome.
So before Jake started barking and interrupting us, just trying to make his presence known, running with UAR Stars and running with that level of talent that was kind of in your age bracket, how hard did those guys push you as a driver?
They definitely made me better, but I can't. I wouldn't have been there without Greg Marlowe.
Yeah.
I have to give Greg Marlowe and even Scott Hall a lot of credit for what they did for me in my racing career, because had it not been for those guys, coming from Bowman Gray, and learning, a new car, because we just got a new car. We were trying to run up front, run with the best of the best people who had, a ton of money, who had full-time employees. And when we met Greg, if it wasn't for Greg, I don't know where I would have been, honestly, because, we didn't know. My dad was still learning how to compete at a high level, setting the cars up wise, but Greg Marlowe helped us out a ton. He gave us setups. He would, even if somebody would help pay they want Marlowe at the racetrack with them, and Marlowe was getting paid to be with them with their car at their trailer, Greg would always come down to see us and to help us out, ask us, how I was doing, how the car was doing. And he always gave us like free advice.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that, but I know my dad thinks a lot of Greg Marlowe, and I have to give him a lot of credit. Scott Hall's the same way. Scott was a beast when he was driving, and so he pretty much served for me like a driving coach, if you will. And he helped me out a lot too. So, to compete with those guys like the Jake Crums, the Patty Roddenbacks, the Brandon McReynolds, Corey LaJoy, they were able to help, give me a good car and help coach me on how to race, and tell me, what I was feeling and how to compete with those guys.
Yeah. So when you look back at your accomplishments, the things you've won, I know narrowing it down to one would probably be impossible, but are there a couple of moments that you kind of go back to in your head where you're just like, not to be conceited or anything like that, but where you're just like, yeah, man, we did that. Like that was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool. That's like, do you have one or two of those that you look back on that you just take a lot of pride in?
Seeing the faces of the crew guys at Martinsville and at Richmond, I don't know that I could really replace that feeling, because those guys, some of them come from Bowman Gray. They had never really ventured out. They were helping us. And then, you put them on a big stage like that, like, wow, that meant a lot to them. So just to see them smile, That was really a cool moment and something that really sticks out to me because, you know, if it wasn't for the people that helped me out whenever, you know, I was coming up, helped my dad out, because my dad and I couldn't do it, you know, with just us. There was a lot of people that spent time and money and to help us, and to see them experience, you know, walking in the same pit stall with Tony Stewart and Denny Hamlin and all those guys. I really enjoyed that. But if there's one moment that stuck out to me the most that you know, Martinsville, running good at Martinsville and Rockingham, not Rockingham, but Richmond was good. But Concord, hands down. Like when I won that race at Concord back in November for the North-South Shootout, I learned a lot about myself that day because I had made up my mind before I got there that I wasn't going to lose. Like I was going to win. And I don't care what I had to do, not necessarily wreck anybody, but if I had to bring it home on a wrecker, like I had made up my mind that I was going to do that.
Yeah. And
my dad gave me a really good car that day, and Trevor Ward and I were racing super hard. But I had, you know, I guess I dug deep into my mind, and I'm like, you know, I just refused to lose. I was not gonna leave there without a trophy. Yeah. And I wish I had found that sooner. Because I think that was the last time I ran in a couple years. But I love Concord to death, man. I mean, even out of all the racetracks, that still is the best one.
Yeah, that's something. So so now to modern day, as you've slowed down pretty drastically. I mean, you were racing a lot.
20
early
years,
on.
Yeah.
Now as things have slowed down a little bit as far as you don't drive as much and you see your little brother out there starting to kind of carve his path a little bit, what is that like for you? Is it tough for you to kind of be back and be a fan, or do you go all in? Like what's your approach with that?
What's crazy to me is I don't have kids, and I was there when my little brother was born, you know, just to see him from when, wow, he was a kid, and just to watch him grow up, and now he's racing, he's taking over. That's just been so awesome to me, and I love him to death. And, you know, I never had any hesitation of saying, look, man, you can have, this is all yours. You go. Because I knew that, you know, for me, for my dad to have to keep up 2 cars and have to have 2 of everything, that was going to be a stretch. And so, you know, this is what he wanted to do, bro. This is yours. You go, and take it all. Go as far as you can. If this is what you want to do, it's yours. And I haven't. So when I go to the racetrack, I really don't even get on the radio. I let my, you know, that's my dad's. You know, that's his kid. So that's how they bond. So I just sit back and I enjoy seeing them interact and seeing how my dad, because, you know, I watch them 2 interact and I'm like, okay.
I've seen this before.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Back.
Okay, yeah. So you know, the modern me now is like, I just enjoy watching him. I enjoy watching him learn how to drive and seeing him win races so early, and I'm just like blown away and impressed. But more importantly, not necessarily with the racing, just who is he becoming as a man.
Yeah.
I'm so super proud of him. I love watching him do new things and trying different sports and just going out there and being okay to fail. So I just enjoy watching them 2 race, and it's honestly, I think it might be more fun for me to be able to sit in the stands and watch him race versus it would be me out there. Yeah. Because, you know, this is something that I never really got to do. You know, it's like when you're racing, you can't watch yourself race, but, you know, I'm in the stands now, I can watch him race. I'm like, wow, you know, you're really good, bro.
I think it makes me think of something Robert Turner said on a previous episode, where he said, when you're the driver, a lot of times you don't see any further than the hood of the race car. You're just you're tunnel focused, and it takes that to be good. And now when you step back and you roll, you know, life changes. God takes you different places, and you look at it from a different perspective. Like you said, you would have never sat in the stands and watch the late model race because you were a driver. You were supposed to be in the race. Now you're getting the enjoyment of watching him.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought you'd have been there 15 years ago?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, man, it's just, this pandemic has thrown everybody for a loop, so I've enjoyed being able to slow down. I was racing for 20 years. It tied up pretty much all my weekends and holidays, so I've enjoyed being able to sit at home and to learn about myself and try new things and being able to go here and there and slow down. I've really been able to enjoy all that. So,
yeah, I think something we have in common, and we talked a little bit about this before we turned the mics on, was, I did something similar with my announcing. I was doing ACE. I was doing so many things. I was just tying myself up, and I was just so busy because I felt like that was my way of showing that, I'm serious about this. Here's how serious I am. I'm spending all my time on it. And it's funny, as time goes on, and for me, it's like the more time slowed down a little bit, and I still do some announcing, kind of like you still do some racing. And as you grow as a man and carve your own path, and seeing what all God has really given you and blessed you with, and part of me, it makes me a little sad that I didn't open my eyes sooner. But now, I don't know how you feel. I'll let you unload on this one. But even at 32, for me, I'm just like,
oh, you're 32?
Yeah. We're not too far apart in age. Yeah. You're better looking than I am, but God blessed you with that.
Yeah.
But
you got a much better beard than I've got.
I wish it wasn't so red. But it's just amazing to look at everything and be like, man, like where God's hand blessed us in so many ways that you didn't see in the moment, but now we're in our 30s, we can kind of look and see.
Yeah. So I've kind of had a pretty, how would I say it? It's been an interesting path for me in my racing career. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you, I always knew that racing wasn't going to be it for me. It was something that I enjoyed doing, something that, I was able to do with my family. But even when I was doing it, I knew that wasn't going to be it. And now that I'm not racing, that I'm able to step back and I see my brother excelling at it, it's just been a big relief for me, because I don't have to have that pressure to keep everything going. And now I can step back and I can say, all right, I see that I'm passionate about this and this. I kind of see where I might have gifts in this area. So, I always knew that whenever I hung the helmet up, like that was going to be it, know, and I never really turned my back. And I'm so focused on the next chapter of my life that it's just been really enjoyable for me to learn to self-discovery and look back on my racing career and see, okay, I've been in this situation before with racing, so that's how I handled it then. Okay, so racing helped me out a lot. It's just from life, I'll never forget. Like there was this one experience when in 2014 at Bowman Gray where there was just this one driver that was just like a gnat, he just wouldn't leave me alone,
Yeah.
And I'm racing for a championship, and we just, for some reason, our cars were a magnet for each other. And he ended up wrecking me one night. And I'll never forget, I was so upset that I had put my hand on the gear shifter. I was going after him, straight Bowman Gray style. But before I could get it in reverse, I heard, God or something like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, wow. Like, that was like one of the few times you hear something, and then I just felt completely calm.
Yeah.
And I learned a valuable lesson, like, you don't always have to fight back. Sometimes the best action is non-action. And so racing taught me a lot about life, and I'm super thankful for that.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited about the next chapter.
Well, tell me about that. Tell me what's been going on. What's life like for Ryan Robertson, the 30-something-year-old who's got a little more time and maybe, I want to say, priorities have changed a little bit. What's it like for you now? How do you?
It's some people would say it'd be quite boring because like I love reading, man, and I want to I feel like that there's something out here for me to pursue, and there's something inside of me that I can give to the world, and so I want to make sure that with this next chapter that I go down, and how I spend the rest of my life moving forward, that I'm able to give back and to help people. And so I'm just really focused on, how can I get the most out of life? My grandfather, he just passed away. And so that was kind of a big deal for me, because when he passed, I'm like, wow, like, you never know what can happen. And, when he passed, I made the vow. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I get everything out of this toothpaste that I can. Yeah. I'm going to make sure that I can squeeze everything out of life. And so I'm just, I'm path of self-discovery. I'm on my own pilgrimage to Canaan, and I enjoy waking up every day, because every day is different. Facing different challenges and understand, like, hey, whatever setback that I'm facing, whatever problem that's in front of me, if I can get around it, then I'm getting one step closer to where I'm supposed to be.
I don't know if you've had this, but obviously there's a ton of scripture I could probably pull out, but the one that always stuck to me and has kind of been what has led me down my path of kind of being, I've been saved since I was 6, but actually being a little more serious about it, being more devoted, doing my reading and praying for something other than the French fries I got at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And it was Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, where it talked about, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than earth, so are my ways above your ways, and my thoughts are above your thoughts. And for me, it was a lot about realizing you can have all the ideas you want, but God's ideas are over yours, and His thoughts are over yours.
And He's always going to have His way in the end.
He always gets His way.
Regardless of, if He tells you to go left and you go right, you may go right for a little while, but you're going to come back left. Yeah. He's going to pull you back in left. And I think part of that, that what's good about that scripture is His ways are higher than our ways. And one of the things that I've learned the most out of is, like, like I told you before, like problems. Like, I look back on some of the terrible things that have happened in my life, just like in everybody's life. And I look back on them now with a different perspective of, okay, He orchestrated all those things. And He wasn't trying to hurt me, even though I thought that's what He was trying to do. He was actually trying to help me, because what I learned from that situation made me who I am today. And not only did it make me who I am, but it was a part of the plan. And nothing that happens in your life and in my life, and I think in everyone's life, is just random. Yeah. I think if you really dig down deep and you search and find the silver lining in that situation, you'll look back and you'll see, you know what, maybe it wasn't pleasant at the time, but it's exactly what I needed. Yeah. Because nobody's going to volunteer to change. We don't like change. and sometimes He's got to orchestrate events in my life and in your life and other people's life to force us to change and, get out thorns that we have to get out.
It's pretty cool stuff. It's amazing. And now, through all this, and obviously we only got the tip of the iceberg, but now you have all those experiences as testimony. Like I said one time to somebody, my parents have been divorced since I was 2, and I didn't know about your parents, and I carried that around as a crutch or something to blame problems on for a long time. And now I look at it as, well, maybe I can use that to get somebody who's been through that, and I can be like, hey man, I literally know what you're going through. I've been going through it my whole life. And you can use it as a tool to bring them in and show them some light where maybe they don't see it. But at the time, you didn't see it. At the time, it was like, man, this sucks, man. This is a really crappy situation. Same with losing family members, grandparents. Like, it sucks, but now, look, I can use this.
Yeah, and you know, that was important for me too, because, you know, things always didn't turn out the right way or the best way for me in racing, and you know, I would do it for a little while, and then, you know, something would happen. I'm like, you know, I don't even want to do this anymore, you know, and so tried different things, and then I'm like, you know, I had to figure out what's next for me.
So basically, in wrapping all this up and putting a bow on it, it's pretty darn cool to see how you've grown. And I've only known you for part of it, but just hearing your story and the conversation we've had and the things we have in common, our common faith and everything, it's just so darn cool to see how God brings us all around.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And we can still be involved in racing.
Sure.
But I think you and I have both had a big priority change.
Well, honestly, learning about myself and trying to add value to other people and developing my relationship with God, that's really the only thing that I could feel that satisfied me. You know, whenever I quit racing, I tried different things, and nothing could satisfy me more than God can. And, you know, like I said, when my grandfather passed away, I really understood the value of a meaningful life, you know, because we can all have, like, you can have a lot of money, more money than you can even spend, but you can't communicate with money.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a piece of paper, and you can't have an emotional attachment, because, like, I can't talk to money, and money can't talk back to me, and in the same way with trophies. And so, you know, I think, you know, I was guilty of pursuing both of those things, and now I really, you know, I'm trying to deflate my ego and just live a more meaningful and impactful life, because, you know, let's just say, you know, if when he pulls my time card, you know, I want to be able to say, wow, I made a difference. And, you know, not saying you can't do that with racing, but, you know, this is a new chapter for me. And so that's where my focus has been.
Well, brother, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I appreciate your time. And if you ever need any kind of help or anything with this new path that you're on, you still got my phone number, because you called me on the way here to make sure I didn't get lost. Man, don't hesitate to reach out, man. Iron sharpens iron.
That's right, man. Well, I appreciate you making the trip down here. It's so good to see you, man. And I'm well wishes for you for your endeavors this year, man.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Be sure to find us on Facebook by searching for the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Give us a like, leave us some comments if you will, share some of our postings and whatnot. If you see something you like, that would really help us get the word out a ton. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the Half Price Concessions Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, whatever app you're using to listen to our show, YouTube as well. Whichever way you're listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way, not only will you automatically see when we put out new material, but it also helps us out a whole lot more than you could ever know. Special thanks to our partners at North Carolina 811 DIG, the Performance Center Racing Warehouse. We've got some new partners coming in as well, so stay tuned. A lot more good stuff to come, but we really appreciate you listening to the Half Price Concessions Podcast. My name is Tyler Williams, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.